You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies. We're reviewing another Marvel movie. Bane is a character from DC, but his name describes our existence, reviewing Marvel movies. Hey, it's the bane of our existence. That's what that song was about. We have to review these Marvel movies. It's actually not. I like talking about Marvel movies. I don't necessarily like Marvel movies or all of Marvel movies, or I don't know. It's complicated. We'll figure it out. I didn't like that Black Widow very much.
Nah, but it was fun to talk about.
It was fun to talk about. And now we get to talk about, I've been advised it's pronounced Shang-Chi, a movie that is doing gangbuster box office.
It's the first movie in theaters worth going to the theater for.
Well, it makes me so happy because Suicide Squad laid an egg and everyone was like, oh, it must have been COVID because obviously everyone would like to see this awesome movie. Well, it wasn't. People just don't actually, our society isn't so degraded that everybody just wants to see violent schlock that hates itself all the time. It turns out people like things that are fun and uplifting. And Shang-Chi may or may not be a good version of fun and uplifting.
But that is Marvel's brand, and it's a new character. And
whereas DC's brand is, we hate ourselves and you, and we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah,
and it turns out that's a less good brand. Anyway, let me just introduce this podcast. Speaking of brands, our brand is Sanity at the Movies, and a man who I'm guessing has never been branded or done any branding, like in terms of like cattle.
Right, that's right.
His name is Benjamin J. Sulzer, the preacher who's a teacher of cinema.
Here I am.
Here you are.
Here I stand.
The only thing you do is stand with great...
Here I sit. I can do no other than talk about Marvel movies.
I mean, you could get up and walk out.
I could.
He's too principled, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm too principled. That's why.
I guess Martin Luther could have gotten up and done something else too. But
Ben, like Martin Luther, is a man of high principle.
A man of principle.
And we're here to talk about Shang-Chi, for goodness sake.
Yeah, a movie of high principle.
Yes.
Or something.
Or something.
Oh man, this one's going to be fun to talk about. But Ben, we can't talk about it until we introduce the pastor who's a master of cinema.
You don't mean Jake Menzel, do you?
I do. How did you guess?
I don't know, but I did. It's Jake. Hi, Jake.
It's me. Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Jake. Well, guys, for the 4,895th time,
But not the last.
We're hopeful though. The end is. I don't know. There's light at the end of that tunnel.
No, there's not. No, there's not. There's not light at the end of the tunnel. We will do Eternals because it stands between us and the Spider-Man movie, which we are all definitely going to do. And then there's going to be the Doctor Strange movie, and then we're going to make decisions about. Yeah, we'll do Eternals. So we'll have to make decisions about the new Thor movie and about.
But maybe Eternals will actually have a big lesbian scene or something, and we'll be like, oh, we're out. We can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and then we'll definitely not do the Spider-Man movie. Come on.
They've just got us hook, line, and sinker. We got to keep doing them.
And if the Spider-Man movie promises that we're going to see more Spider-Man stuff in Doctor Strange, I mean, I don't see the end.
Yeah, I can't deny it. Can't deny it. But they always promise something they don't give.
The end for my kids just came with Endgame.
Right.
So Marvel's over.
Yep.
It's a clean cut, clean break.
Really? They won't see the new Spider-Man movie?
They'll see the Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
But,
unless there's something egregious about it, which there won't be.
Right. But that'll be it. They're not going to see the Doctor Strange movie. They're not going to see.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, it is one of those things where pretty universally when a Marvel movie comes out, the people of a certain age, like at our church plant, are talking about it. So I feel like it's still worth talking about. But I mean, they are the premier brand right now. There isn't anything. DC, as Suicide Squad proves, just does not even come close. There may be some individual properties like Aquaman that people are fond of for whatever insane reason because that movie sucked. But everybody liked it. Actually, I liked Aquaman fine.
It was fine.
I'm not sure where that anger came from.
I was like, I didn't know you felt that way about Aquaman.
Yeah, it's kind of the only actually fun DC movie.
Yeah, well, I think I feel that way more about Jason Momoa. I just don't think he's much of a charismatic star. He's a little bit of a zero. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Aquaman or Jason Momoa. We're here to talk about the incredibly charismatic, not at all a zero, guy who plays Shang-Chi or whatever.
Simu
Liu. And I'm being maybe 40% sarcastic because he is not that charismatic, I don't think, but he's fine. He's okay.
I think he's charming and pretty magnetic. Actually, they just didn't write a character for him to play.
It would.
Yeah, I blame the movie, not him.
It would really help if he had a character to play.
I like watching him on screen.
And let's talk. Go ahead.
I mean, the cast they built around him didn't do him any favors.
Yes, that's the problem. Is there is one person who has the magnetic pull of 1,000 suns in this movie, and it's Awkwafina. No, that's not true at all. No,
she exists in this movie because they were insecure about whether or not he could carry the screen, and
she gets in his way as much as anything, in my humble opinion. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just a crusty conservative that.
I have thoughts about that, but I'll save them.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Let me give some very brief context as to the history of Shang-Chi because it's actually kind of interesting. So you have to understand the Yellow Peril. The fact that...
Fu Manchu.
Yeah, you have to understand the fact that people were really scared of China in the late 1800s and early 20th century. People were really scared of China. And I think, I don't know, we don't have to litigate this today, but I think we felt bad because we brought a bunch of Chinese over. You can read all about this, but there was the Burlingame Treaty with China in 1868, which encouraged what we're not supposed to call them this now, but the coolie movement. It encouraged a bunch of cheap Chinese labor to come over. It's kind of like if anybody's ever read East of Eden, the character of Lee in that book, or... if you've seen a Western and it has the Chinese people that are building the railways, or you see some old timey movie where they go to Chinatown and there's an opium den and it's all mysterious and everything. You kind of had that culture where we brought a whole ton of really cheap Chinese labor over, and they were able to undercut all of our fine American workers, which means that everybody looked down on them, but they were actually helping our industries grow. This is in the late 1800s, and helping us build railways and stuff. And so you have a lot of racism and a lot of just the working man feeling undercut by the fact that we're bringing in all this Chinese labor. You have that, but then you have the actual reality that they are bringing this creepy pagan Eastern culture with them that's pretty godless. And so it's a little bit like when people look back on McCarthyism, and they try and make it all like McCarthy was the worst. He was this terrible demagogue. It's like, okay, maybe he was, but you can never forget that there actually was this thing called communism, and it was sweeping across the world, and it was really scary. You have to put that in the equation before you judge Joseph McCarthy. And by the same token, yeah, we really mistreated the Chinese, and there's no gussying it up as anything else. But they were bringing a pagan culture over, and there were things that were bad, and there was sex that was associated with that, and there was opium and drug use that was associated with that, and there were reasons that people felt like there was a yellow peril, which is actually a phrase that not a phrase that historians have gone back and put on the way that we understood those times. It's actually a phrase that was bandied about at the turn of the 20th century because we were really scared of Chinese invasion, of Eastern dominance, of, there's just like this mysterious culture that we don't understand that is just lurking out there, and they send us cheap labor, and we have these various treaties, but we really don't understand them. And, there's a whole history with Britain and everything. I'm talking about it more from the American perspective here, but, you've got Britain and Hong Kong and everything. Anyways, out of that comes a lot of interesting invasion literature and stuff like that. And one of the best things to come out of it, or just most fun pulpy things, was a series of novels by Sax Rohmer called the Fu Manchu novels, and I have read several of these actually in the old days when I was really into pulp stuff, and they're really fun. They're really fun. I mean, they're really racist. Like Fu Manchu is this evil, plotting, scheming Chinese supervillain, kind of a Moriarty type, he's just always like, oh no, the Archduke is being targeted. They're going to release, poisonous scorpions into his bedroom. And we'll get there, and then he's in league with the Tugs. So we're going to have like a Tuggy assassin, and he's going to attack us, and, all kinds of stuff. And, the stalwart, whatever his name is, like the Sherlock Holmes type guy and the Dr. Watson type guy, they're always like racing around London, foiling Fu Manchu's schemes. And I remember one where they get locked in a basement with these poisonous mushrooms. Fu Manchu is like the king of the James Bond thing that Austin Powers made fun of so much, where, we're not going to actually just shoot our adversary. We're going to hook him up to a machine with lasers, or in this case, put him in a basement with these deadly mushrooms that are going to release a spore, and he's going to start getting sick. So the heroic Nayland Smith has to fight his way out of the basement and all this kinds of stuff. And it's really great pulp. It's so much fun. For me, it's more fun than Sherlock Holmes or something like that, because Sherlock Holmes is always like solving these mysteries, which is fun, but I like the more pulpy, like they're getting attacked by assassins. And I don't know. Did you ever read any Fu Manchu by any chance?
I started reading one. I found a random audiobook of Fu Manchu on LibriVox, free audiobooks, and I started listening to it, or something like that.
Right.
It was fun. But no, that's as far as I got.
Yeah, in any case, they're very fun and very xenophobic. Like, I mean, there's no two ways about it. We don't have much sympathy for.
Oh man,
we don't have really any sympathy for Chinese culture. It's just this mysterious thing that's invading and wants to destroy us. And I don't even know that Fu Manchu is portrayed as not a function of his government. Like, I think Fu Manchu is just working for the Chinese. He's not like off on his own doing anything like that. So in any case, what happened was Marvel was a thing that made comics in the 20th century. You guys have heard of Marvel, right?
Heard of it.
And they decided that they wanted to actually license the Fu Manchu novels. And this was around the time that Bruce Lee was hitting real big, that all the sort of chop-sake movies in the 70s, all the kind of exploitation films with kung fu and stuff like that were happening. The Shaw Brothers. You can listen to me and Ben actually give a history basically of martial arts cinema in perhaps a poorly named but actually pretty good episode of this very podcast called
Ramble in the Bronx.
We needed a punny title, folks.
We did when we got it.
Yeah.
And boy, did we get it.
Should we have called it Shanghai Quality Episode that you should totally listen to?
Probably.
Should we have called it, I don't know, what's another punny?
Enter the best martial arts podcast you've ever heard.
Yeah. Shall listen to this
Shall listen
to this podcast.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things we should have called it, but
would have been better.
We called it Ramble in the Bronx, and I think mostly we called it Ramble in the Bronx because that was one kung fu movie that I thought most people would know, or at least have seen the VHS and Blockbuster if they come from my my generation.
Yeah.
Talking about my generation. So, anyway, Marvel Studios, so you can actually listen to a history of all that stuff. But basically, Bruce Lee hit it really big, and he's making these films in Hong Kong, also in America, and in a lot of co-productions, which is, I think, what Enter the Dragon is between Hong Kong and America. Hong Kong, if you don't know, was under British rule until 1997. It's a very westernized culture, but it also is... what's the word? It combines a lot of Eastern and Western influences because it had a great cinema scene. I think it's basically dying now that it's under direct Chinese control. It got handed over to the Chinese in 1997, and China's a pretty dark, evil place. IMHO, and pretty oppressive and pretty restrictive. But historically, through the 20th century, Hong Kong had a great cinema scene. And they were very influential in the international action film market. And there were different phases of that. Go ahead.
You can see now all the pressure that China is putting on its stars to disown Hong Kong. And
yeah.
You saw the stuff happened with Mulan, and a lot of pressure has been brought to bear on Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan himself is actually pretty much sold out Hong Kong.
Jackie Chan's become a shill for the Communist Party. He literally gave a speech within the last few months where he said he wished he could be a party member. Like, wouldn't it be cool? Jackie Chan, in his older age, has just become a mascot for the Chinese Communist Party.
And they're still basically going to cancel him, is what it looks like. So it just doesn't matter.
Yeah. But Hong Kong had this flourishing before China, had this, and a little bit after, because it took a while for Chinese to really exert their control. And they will still claim that Hong Kong is somewhat independent, but anyone who knows what they're talking about says that's just not true. But in any case, there was this flourishing Hong Kong film industry that basically has been ahead of the curve on action cinema through the latter half of the 20th century. So you had the Shaw Brothers studios, which did early 70s sort of, how did we decide this is pronounced? The floaty martial arts epics?
Wuxia?
Wuxia films, which are very corny by today's standards. And then Bruce Lee hit big, and suddenly we had a million Bruce Lee movies and Bruce Lee ripoffs. And it's pretty hilarious. The exploitation market is shameless on the international scene. So when Bruce Lee died, you had Bruce Lie and Bruce Lee spelled L-I, and you had like all these guys. And Booth Lee, yeah.
Really?
You had all these fake Bruce Lees that did other Bruce Lee movies. So anyways, when something's popular, especially in the international film market, they'll just churn out all these things. So you had a million bad kung fu movies, some of which are pretty fun. And one of which we tried to watch, which is what turned into our ramble in the Bronx episode. Which
is old Jackie Chan.
An old Jackie Chan movie.
Drunken Master.
The original Drunken Master, which is pretty slow and corny by today's standards, but has a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
If you like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which we discovered Jake did not like that sort of thing. Not a big Drunken Master fan. Jake, this is your big chance to give all your thoughts on Jackie Chan's original Drunken Master.
I didn't care about it.
Didn't care about it. So I'm sorry, I've sort of veered into a history of film. Let me close that loop, and then we'll get back to Marvel. So Hong Kong cinema. We had the Bruce Lee influenced martial arts movies through the 70s. Then we had what's called the heroic bloodshed movies of the 80s. That's John Woo was the big progenitor of that kind of stuff. And so those are the movies where guys are wearing sunglasses and they're diving through the air and they're pumping a million bullets from their double pistols into their adversaries
in slow motion.
In slow motion.
While doves fly.
Yeah. And, as far as guy movie type things, you really can't do much better, and hugely influential. Die Hard is downwind of that. All the kind of 90s action-y, Michael Bay stuff is downwind of that. Basically, America. Downwind. Yeah. Well,
what's that smell?
Maybe
it's John Woo.
Maybe I was making a comment. Maybe I was making a comment. Maybe I did it unintentionally. No, actually, John Woo, very violent, hyper violent. Just millions of guys running out just to get mowed down by machine gun, and thousands of squibs and blood everywhere, and all in slow motion, and very balletic, but hugely influential. And basically everything from Die Hard on is from that well, because the Americans were like, whoa, they are way ahead of us in terms of depicting senseless violence in an entertaining way. And so they were. But that whole cycle kind of runs through the 80s and early 90s. And then you have a man named Zhu Hark. I think that's how you say it. Zhu?
I never knew how to pronounce it.
But he brings back what was very popular in the 70s, which were the wuxia films. And wuxia is a genre of literature, actually. And it's kind of like our fantasy novels. There's a million kind of Tolkien, downwind of Tolkien novels. Well, they have their own genre of stuff kind of set in their medieval, their equivalent of like fantasy medieval land. And it always involves martial artists who are super powered and can float around. And there's a whole literary genre that's been through the 20th century And they started making films in the 70s. But then in the 90s, they had the technology to really do it. And so you could hook people up to wires and you could have them float around and you could have them do really fancy kung fu stuff. Once Upon a Time in China is one of the mainstays of that genre. One of the ones to watch. I mean, I don't know. It probably has naughty stuff. I don't really remember.
Yeah, actually, the first one of those came out in 91. I don't think the first two have naughty stuff, but they're weird.
Yeah, I don't know that you'd be particularly entertained. I would be entertained by them.
The first two have some really famous and very intricate scenes.
Right. So it's like, what's an example of a scene? It's Jet Li.
There's a very famous and very long ladder fight scene where Jet Li is inside some kind of warehouse fighting another guy, and they're fighting. There's these wooden ladders everywhere, it seems, and they're bouncing back and forth from ladder to ladder, and it's incredibly elaborate. It's like 7 minutes of this fight.
Right.
I don't know how else to describe it. It's been copied by certain.
Sure. Well,
it's been copied. I don't know. I can't think of an American. Oh, there was some terrible garbage sword fight. The Musketeer.
Right.
Ripped off the ladder fight. No one saw that. That was garbage, but it was released in the American market. That's the only example that comes right to mind.
Well, the real thing that happens is in 1999, The Matrix comes out, and then in 2000, I think it is, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon comes out, and so we dumb Americans are suddenly aware of, there's this thing called, as we would say, wire fu, and you hook people up to wires, and you make them float around, and they can do all this really cool stunt work and stuff like that. But suddenly it becomes a big thing here, and you've got Charlie's Angels doing it and all this kind of dumb stuff. And it feeds into what becomes the Marvel House style and what becomes Zack Snyder's style. And, it is, modern action is downstream or downwind, depending on how you feel about it, of Hong Kong. I mean, Hong Kong. But the sad thing is Hong Kong hasn't really been influential since the early 2000s. Because they still have a robust film market. It's just not the same now that it's essentially under Chinese communist control. And if you want to make lots of money, that's not where if you're really talented, why would you stay somewhere where you're afraid that they're going to steal all your assets? So, yep, capitalism for the win. Anyway, that's the Hong Kong film market. It's important because that's what Shang-Chi is doing. Shang-Chi is referencing all these things. It is, in a sense, its own wuxia film. I mean, that's very much the opening scene with Tony Leung and the girl falling in love as they have this beautiful fight scene in the woods or whatever. That's just classic. You see that kind of thing in those movies all the time. People might be familiar with Hero or House of Flying Daggers, or there's a few ones that were basically made for the international market and hit more or less big over here. But anyway, let's go back to the 1970s. Bruce Lee's really big. Marvel wants to cash in. Marvel is crass and commercial, and they want to cash in. And so they decide they need their own kung fu character. And instead of just creating one, they license the Fu Manchu novels. And they create this character, this Shang-Chi character, and he's basically designed as the son of Fu Manchu. The Tony Leung character is basically Fu Manchu, but Fu Manchu has since then become very politically incorrect. It's not cool to even acknowledge his existence because he is just such a stereotype of yellow peril. And so at a certain point, not too terribly long ago, Marvel just retconned it. They just decided that I think what they said was, I think they did something in universe where it was like Fu Manchu was one of the bad guy's names, but one of his aliases, but actually he's got this other alias, and isn't that cool? So it's not about Fu Manchu, and it's not about yellow peril. And actually, we like Chinese culture, and we think it's cool, and we're not just exploiting it for something because it's popular. But it very much started that way. And I don't know, I guess we could have some deep philosophical argument as to whether it's still that way. But that's how it started in any case. So Shang-Chi, ignoble. I guess it's a little bit like the movie itself. Ignoble, sort of. Well, I guess he doesn't have. It's not like the movie itself. It's the opposite of the movie. Because in the movie, he has a very noble birth, but then he goes downhill. But it's more like the way that the movie. Well, I'll stop comparing it to the movie. The franchise has a rather ignoble beginning as a piece of Marvel schlock exploitation. And this movie, I think, had a lot of free reign in terms of just completely reinterpreting the character. It's a lot like Blade, if people remember Wesley Snipes' Blade the Vampire Slayer. Blade came out in the 70s, and he was such a, we're going to cash in on blaxploitation film. I mean, it's really the exact same thing. It's 1-to-1. Blade was this jive-talking guy who was like all the worst stereotypes of black people, and he was this vampire killer, and it's so stupid. And then they're like, well, this is still kind of a popular property, so let's make a movie. And then David Goyer completely reconceptualizes the character with Wesley Snipes, and he becomes this really awesome, iconic character. And when Marvel releases their new Blade movie, it's going to be way more based on what the old Blade movie did than anything that the comics ever did.
Yeah. Well, the comics, like a lot of the time, the comics follow the movies then.
Right.
Once you repopularize something.
Yeah, exactly. Just like I think, what's his face? Nick Fury is black now. He never was.
He started being black before the
Samuel
Marvel movies, I think.
Well, I don't pretend to be a comics expert.
In the Ultimate Marvel universe, which is now shut down, maybe?
Yes, I think it is. But that's where they reconceptualized a lot of things.
I saw something recently where Marvel's even killing properties based on their on-screen success. So I think Inhumans is a property that's just dying because they failed.
Which makes sense. I mean, the movies are the tip of the spear, and the movies are bringing in the money. Comics
if you can't sell it on screen, then why waste time?
Yeah.
Well, what's funny, I know we've said this before, but I read quite a few comics. I liked Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men as a kid, but you know who I never read or cared about? It just happened to glimpse and be like, okay, you appeared in my comic I did like was Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, all the stuff that Marvel successfully made really popular and made a ton of money off of. So I don't know how those comics are doing now, like current series of those comics.
You certainly see them. I mean, if you walk through a Barnes and Nobles, which I do sometimes, you will see Iron Man comics in the comic section, just like sitting out. I honestly, I'd love to be able to say I knew who Iron Man was before the first movie, but I don't even know if I was aware of his existence. He really felt like a nobody coming out of nowhere to me, but I was more of a DC guy in terms of reading.
That explains a lot about you, Nathan.
Yeah, well, and I'm not proud of it.
You hate yourself and everybody else, and
yeah,
don't care. Isn't that how you described DC earlier?
That I don't care. Was that on this version of the podcast? We had a couple.
Maybe it wasn't.
False
maybe
starts.
It wasn't. Maybe it was on a false start.
Well, Batman is still the coolest, so it's not so much that I was a DC guy as that I was a Batman guy, and I'm not ashamed of that, because how can you not be a Batman guy? So that's Shang-Chi. They made this movie. They hired, as they do, an indie guy of the correct ethnicity named Daniel Cretton something to basically gave him free reign, a lot like what they did with Ryan Coogler. And
Destin Daniel Cretton. Cretton. Yeah.
And he drew on all these things, drew on a lot of wuxia films and stuff like that, and made a movie that's breaking Labor Day box office records, and people are just happy to be back in the theater and have a great tentpole movie to sort of unite around. And we're here to say what we thought about it. So what'd you guys think about Shang-Chi?
Well, just give our overview first.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Who goes first?
Did you guys bring any did you guys bring any context to this?
No.
You mean
I've
baggage?
seen Shang-Chi and do you mean baggage?
Sorry, baggage, yeah. Did you guys bring any context to this? Yeah.
I've seen Shang-Chi in 2 or 3 comic books before.
Right.
Have no opinion of what the character should be or ought to be. I like martial arts movies.
I like martial arts movies, and I don't know if it's fair to say I like Chinese culture. I don't love what's wicked about Chinese culture or what's pagan about Chinese culture, but the exoticism of Chinese culture, like the cheap version of Chinese culture, just the sheen of it, the way it looks, the accoutrement that comes with it. I think I enjoy that about as much as anything. I mean, I can watch a boring Chinese drama and get something out of it just because it's interesting to me what the people look like and what the things that they're eating and the way that their landscape looks. It's just fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah, agree. I'm with you there.
So I think I would be more inclined to like this movie than I would. Like, for example, I guess the obvious comparison point is Black Panther. I don't care. I don't care about African culture. I'm not intrigued by it. I didn't grow up reading books or watching movies about tribes people or things like it's just, it doesn't speak to me one way or another. Whereas Chinese culture sort of does. So I guess that's the only baggage I would bring to it.
Yeah.
Jake, your thoughts?
I have no history with Shang-Chi, and martial arts movies are fine. They're fun, and I like exoticism too. That's it.
Okay, well, let's litigate this movie. What do you guys think?
It's fun. It's fun. It gives you it's fun, especially the first third.
Yes.
And then the middle act is a drag, and the last act, I wouldn't call it a drag exactly, but it's giving you payoffs for things it never set up. So it's not really giving you payoffs. It really only leaves you with one storyline that it follows with any integrity, which is the villainous dad,
right?
Which is the main star of the movie.
Yeah,
Tony Leung, a Hong Kong superstar. This is apparently his American film debut, which I did not know, but he's been in a lot of movies, and he is a fantastic actor and magnetic. And
this is his movie. I mean,
it's his movie.
He is just one of those guys. I mean, they say the real way to tell a star is, are they interesting when they're doing nothing? Can they just hold your attention when they're observing something or when they're just sitting in a scene? And Tony Leung, he outclasses everybody. I mean, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody. He's just one of international cinema's great stars of all time. He is awesome. And he is so darn classy in this movie and brings so much to a nothing character. And he's great. I mean, I think he's worth buying a ticket for, actually, just to watch a master do something with nothing.
I agree.
He's really, 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 really strong in the movie.
I think anything else I want to say will happen when we get into structure. I know Jake has a good take because we were talking about this yesterday.
You just repeated my take. So
yeah, I knew I was doing that, but
I don't think that was your take yesterday. But
no, it wasn't. It wasn't quite my take. I think might slightly differ from yours. Like, I think I was more forgiving in the third act of the fact that it stunk. And I was just like, this is fun. And I just want to ignore the fact that it's nonsense dramatically. But then the more I thought about your take, Jake, it happened that I thought I became less forgiving. So now who knows where I am?
Well, I thought...
Okay, so the take that you said, is that your take or isn't it? Because it's my take.
It is my take. It is my take. Yeah.
All right.
But I still had fun.
Then you just turned around and said that you weren't sure if that was your... I don't know. I'm confused about what you actually think about...
What I think is what I said. And
okay.
I still had fun. And I feel like I'd probably still watch it again in the theater or something if I had a reason to.
I would
not watch it again in the theater.
I would never watch it again, period. I don't care that much. But I'll watch the bus scene a few times on YouTube or whatever. I think I might agree with both of you. I mean, I agree with Ben to this extent, or with the second Ben to this extent. It was fun. It had pretty visuals, and I never felt myself resenting the movie while I watched it. I sure did resent it when I thought about it afterwards. But it was pleasant. And I think some of that was just coming off of COVID. It was nice to sit in a theater with a lot of people and have sound and light thrown at me aggressively. But
I think I forgave it a lot in the moment because it was competently made visually and as an action film, even when it wasn't doing a good job telling a story. And there's just so much I liked and wanted to work, especially in terms of anything with Leung, with Tony Leung.
But it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. It didn't work. It was just fun.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
That's it.
How do we get into this one?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of the same stuff. The Marvel through line right now is dads. This movie and Black Widow. They're like, yeah, we want dads. Also, screw dads.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need dads.
Well, Jake, did you ever actually give us your take? I mean, your take is Ben's take, I guess. But Ben take number one.
Jake's take is more detailed with reasons.
I thought the first act was really fun and really great. I thought it did a nice job of paying tribute to all those other films and genres while grounding it visually in its own little universe.
Mm-hmm.
And thought it was some of the best action I've ever seen in Marvel, and the first Marvel movie that seems to really take choreography seriously, even in the stupid third act.
Mm-hmm.
When they go to the CGI battle, it's actually choreographed and not just... Even the CGI dragon fight is choreographed.
Yeah, I think as far as bad CGI dragon fights go, this is one of the better bad CGI dragon fights I've seen in a while.
I think that if they had made Wenwu in the Ten Rings, it would have been a much more interesting and fun film. They cast a nobody, a new actor, as their lead, and then they didn't trust him to carry the film, and they put Awkwafina beside him and said, here, we're not going to write a character for you, have personality. And they did the same thing for Simu Liu, and he was charming and fun as an actor on screen, but he didn't have much to play. I can't tell you what his arc is. I can't tell you what he learned. Can't tell you how he grew. And I don't know, I felt like a lot of studio stuff was happening too. That there was a good movie here that this couldn't let be a good movie. So the humor is a good example of that. There's just not a lot of things that are funny, and a lot of things that the movie doesn't seem to think are funny that are in there to be funny for kids. But
I wonder why they weren't able to trust this one like they did Ryan Coogler with Black Panther, because Black Panther wasn't funny, and Black Panther was just okay, especially because of all the cultural baggage that it had. It was okay just being like, oh, well, noble African culture actually isn't a yuck fest, guys, so we're not going to do it. I mean, they have Black Panther's little sister or whatever, and she's
colonizer jokes.
And
she's funny. Well, they just leaned into beating up on the white man for their humor, and they put Martin Freeman in there as their dopey white sidekick who is shocked and surprised that these people are so smart and sophisticated.
But that actually plays in, you can like it or hate it, but it plays into their themes, and it makes sense. It's of a piece with what the movie's doing. What they didn't feel a need is, where's Black Panther's funny sidekick who's going to be like, I'm stuck on a ladder while action's happening.
Yeah, now I magically have a part to play in how this ends.
Man.
And in 2 days' time, I've learned how to shoot an arrow such that I can shoot a kill shot from 300 yards away at a dragon. Look, what the heck?
I don't want to be a conservative scold, but I hate Awkwafina so much. I actually really like her in a movie called The Farewell, which I would recommend that anyone see. But in that, she's playing essentially the same character, but they don't give her a big arrow at the end because they're just like, this character's pathetic. She's supposed to be pathetic. She's like, she can't get her act together. She's just kind of the neurotic.
She's just caught between being Chinese and being American in that movie.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of what they're trying to play with. The movie is just constantly sidestepping stereotypes at every possible point. But they fail to give us any types to latch onto in terms of characterization or heroes.
Except for Tony Leung,
who you mean the 1,000-year-old murderous, homicidal, psychopathic maniac who they humanize by giving a love interest? Like, he is the most interesting thing that's happening, and he is the most sympathetic character on screen. And all they had to do to take this murderous, psychopathic monster was give him a human motivation to. It's just like stupid the way that.
Well, and also Tony Leung never plays him as a psychopath, which is fascinating because the movie keeps telling you that he's a bad guy, but you don't actually ever get that scene. Even when he's destroying the army at the beginning, like we've seen a million CGI armies go flying through the air. That does not evoke emotion out of us. You need him to step on an orphan's neck or to kick a dog or something that tells us villain. And this movie tells you villain, but it actually never shows you villain. It actually never makes you feel villain. Not once did I ever have any lack of sympathy for Wen Wu. He just seemed like a really noble, great guy, played by a wonderful actor, and I was just rooting for him the whole time. Yeah. And it kind of made me mad. I was like,
but they give you that dance at the beginning, and it's so beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
And
Tony Leung, it's like he heard your criticism, Jake. He's like, I'm going to give these people a type, the noble Chinese guy. I mean, that's the type, I guess. You know, the wise, noble, melancholy warrior. I'm going to give them that. It's not in the script. It's actually kind of counterintuitive to who my character needs to be. My character needs to be much more volatile, but I also need to fall in love with this woman. So I'm just going to play that.
And I need to be willing to abandon my 1,000-year quest for power to start a family.
And I've actually watched interviews with Tony Leung, and he's like, yes, I decided that my character's dad was mean to him, and he had he has this whole backstory that makes sense of the character that's not in the movie at all. But he explicitly says, I decided I wasn't going to play a villain. Super villains are boring. I think this guy has a lot of insecurities. Here's what they are. Here's how I mapped it out. And it's like, yeah, I'd love to see that movie.
Yeah, well, that is the character that we got. And
yeah, every time he's
really
on screen, we get that movie.
It's really compelling. And really, it's just compelling. That's all. We should have gotten Wen Wu in the Ten Rings. And it could have ended with him. It could have ended with him setting aside the Ten Rings to start his family, and with the birth of Shang-Chi, and it could have been set in 1996. And that would have been an awesome origin story movie that gave us the setup for a Shang-Chi movie.
It essentially would have been like the pre-Black Panther story, like how the king got there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the T'Chaka story?
I think of this as Gangs of New York syndrome. I don't know if anybody's ever seen Martin Scorsese's Gangs of New York, but in that movie, the heroes are a young, not particularly sophisticated as an actor yet. This is like coming off of Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz, and they're both so flat, and they both feel like such TV actors. And then you have Daniel Day-Lewis playing Bill the Butcher, this iconic supervillain of old-timey New York. And it's just like, why are we spending any time with Leonardo DiCaprio? Here's, it's kind of the classic criticism that people make of Batman 89. Like, they obviously cared about Jack Nicholson, so just make a Jack Nicholson movie. Like, why are we even calling this a Batman movie? I don't know that that's a fair criticism of Batman 89. That movie has a lot of problems, but I don't know if that's actually one of them. But you'll see certain movies where it's like, they only really cared about the villain, or the acting here is so one-sided. It's one actor is so outclassing everybody that at a certain point as filmmakers, you just have to figure out a way to actually lean into that, even if that's not what's on the page. And I bet Marvel actually does lean into it retroactively. I bet they bring Wen Wu back. I bet they make him a good guy, just like they've done with Loki. Maybe Tony Leung is one and done. He made his American money. He's not going to want to do it again. But I bet they've shot
lots of other great actors in these types of one and done roles that were they did Jude Law and stupid Captain Marvel's origin story.
But Jude Law there gets defeated by the material. Tony Leung should be defeated by the material, but he kung fu kicks the material through the door of death, where the material gets eaten by a Lovecraft dragon soul monster.
I don't think that the material is actually, I think the material actually helped him, because the material's schizophrenic. It's not like they just didn't.
They're not telling a coherent story.
Yeah.
They're not. What Ben said about setups and payoffs is right. What is set up that is paid off in that third act? What character beats with Simu Liu are set up?
Well, I don't know.
Paid off.
I just felt old. I was like, am I missing this? Does my brain just not follow these movies anymore? Like, why? He falls into the water and then he's reborn as Dragon Man. Where did that come from? What was that?
It's completely
was that set up
unearned.
anywhere? Was that just arbitrary?
No. It's not set up anywhere. We have some... Mom's fight style is something about having the heart of the dragon, but she gave up the heart of the dragon. But then we get a little back scene where she says he has the heart of the dragon, but it means nothing. Mm-hmm. They don't tell you, they don't give you anything about what any of it means. And in the moments where they could, they do this dopey stuff where it's like, what is the secret behind the ordinary villager in this village's ability to overcome Wen Wu, even if he has the 10 rings? Well, you have a closed fist and you should open your hand and have an open hand instead of a closed fist. And is that all we get?
Well,
and the movie just forgets all of the lore it sets up or tries to set up or doesn't care, or it's just like,
could it possibly
really
be a ritual decoupled from meaning? I mean, I felt a little vindicated as I watched this movie because I was just, not that you guys were pushing back on that point necessarily, but I was just like, this is another example of the thing that I personally would argue Spider-Verse does really well, that this movie does really poorly, but forget about Spider-Verse. This is another example of they want you to feel all the feelings of a hero's journey, but they don't actually want you to latch onto anything specific about what makes a hero or what makes a journey. And in this case, I don't think it's just sloppiness. It's just laziness.
And that's where what I said earlier about, the movie's so fixated on sidestepping stereotypes. Well, it feels bad about the fact that Shang-Chi is a man, but it doesn't feel bad enough to give us a sister that is any kind of character, or an Awkwafina that's any kind of character, or an aunt that's any kind of character who can do it just wants to feel bad about that. And so it wants to be a father-son story, but also it doesn't want to be a father-son story. And it's just really confused.
It wants to do a lot of things by the whole... I was really irritated by the wooden diorama scene. I was like, oh great, a diorama in the village that tells the whole story of the village and sets up a bunch of things that the first hour and a half of the movie didn't bother to set up, or even not even mention. We're going to shoehorn it all in. How can we force feed you this material in a way that's stereotypically charming that a special magical village would have? How about a wooden diorama explained by a noble villager of a giant battle of good and evil that we have to introduce in the third act of this movie?
Right. Well, and the movie's constantly doing that. It's actually weird how aggressively ill-structured it is. It will constantly be like, here's the information at the last possible minute that you need to feel something. I mean, I sort of get what they were going for with withholding the whole Shang-Chi's supposed to go murder the guy that killed his mother, the central mother, how she died story. They withhold. You could see how a good movie could do that.
Yeah.
But the way this movie does it, it's like, oh, you forgot to tell me why I should care about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Until it's too late. Like, I could have been caring about this the whole time if you just told me why. But you waited till the last possible minute. And then with the village, again, with one little handy thing to keep in your mind, folks, is a third act problem. This is like a screenwriting piece of wisdom that people say. A third act problem is always a first act problem. A third act problem, always a first act problem. This movie had so many payoffs that it either forgot to set up, or it's just like the guy didn't realize that you could, like, in a screenwriting document thing, you can like move text around and you can rewrite and stuff. So he's like, oh, I forgot to set the thing up. I better have a flashback now. Okay, there it is. And then here's my one draft. It's so weird to have writing that's this bad. I mean, that's where it almost feels aggressively intentional, like they don't want it to connect or something.
Well, and the other thing, so even the fact you have so much flashback ridden stuff, right? But the one thing that you're going to exposit that's supposed to be like the really emotional, this is my internal struggle, is that he went through with killing the man responsible for his mother's death.
Yeah, you're not going to show us that.
You're not going to show us that.
At least give us a wooden diorama. He should have pulled out a wooden diorama
I know.
of him killing the guy.
I mean,
keep this.
That's supposed to resonate. Like, if what we're dealing with here, if what we can like retroactively piece together is what he's actually been running from is the fact that he is his father, and that he actually went through with it.
Yeah.
But instead, he's going to say that, and then Awkwafina's going to be like, your dad trained you to be an assassin since you were 7, and he sent you on a hit when you were 14. That's messed up. Get over it. And then we're just all over it. Like, it's just so stupid.
Yeah, no, it's bad. It does feel aggressively bad. But to come back to something, you were saying there's no types, Jake, to latch onto.
Yeah.
But what I want to say is, ironically, everything in this movie feels like the same exact type. And the village, for example, the village is pure Chinese movie stereotype.
Yeah,
the magical
and so the dragon fight
and every everything. Character in it, the magic. Okay,
it's just like Raya.
Oh,
like,
it's the dumb village man who wants to kill the invaders. What are you doing, you stupid village man? I'm the wise village matriarch. I'll come out and set things right, and I'll warmly invite you in because that's what wise village matriarchs do. And then you'll serve my wise matriarch purposes, you dumb village patriarch. Well, that's just a stereotypical. I've seen that in Asian movies before, and
pretty sure I've seen Michelle Yeoh play that character before.
Probably you have. And Michelle Yeoh is just playing the magical auntie. That's a type of thing. I'm the magical martial arts lady, and all it's doing is by plugging in those types, it's telling you, the viewer, hey, fill in the rest of this emotional journey on your own, and you tell me why this works.
Which is exactly what I was talking about with Spider-Verse. It's giving us all those things that feel tropey, like these are the kinds of scenes we see, these are the kinds of characters.
So now you know what to do with your emotions.
Right, and it kind of works. And that's what feels so nasty about it ultimately, is that you're like, oh yeah, magical auntie, I get that, I've seen that. It works.
I did.
Yeah, but because the magical auntie works doesn't mean that they did anything that actually works in the movie.
No, it doesn't. And I suppressed this. I actively suppressed this when I was watching the movie, but I resented all of the magical village stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care. And part of the reason I was willing to suppress it was because I did like Simu Liu. I did like Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
I did want him. I was hoping for a meaningful emotional climax for him in some way with his dad. And the movie kind of gestures at that too, and it kind of gives it to you, and it through the same way we're what's that?
It could have worked, but it undercuts it.
It could have worked. Yeah,
at every point it undercuts it.
But it's
I had the same thing. As soon as we get into Magical Village, it's like I've seen this before. Mm-hmm. I've seen these characters in Fantastic Beasts movies.
We saw Tom Cruise do this.
Yes, we've seen Tom Cruise do this in Last Samurai, and we've seen all of this crap before. And the dragons, and I watched Raya not long ago, and all of it's just like, it's just the dragon eating its own tail. But
good one.
Yeah, thanks. Let me pat myself on the back for that.
Oh, I just got it. Yeah, good.
Thanks.
4 stars.
But wait, it ate the other dragon's tail, I thought.
Oh my goodness. But so like, you have the moment. I believe in the drama between Simu Liu and Tony Leung. I believe in the drama between Shang-Chi and Wenwu. I believe in the son who's like, you checked out on us. Like, you chose the rings over us. And I believe in the father. I believe in the patriarchal father who looks at his 7-year-old son and says, why weren't you dead on the ground? But why didn't you stand between those men and your mom?
That's the movie. Can I just pause you there? That's the movie I want to see.
Yeah.
I loved that movie. When Tony Leung takes him and makes him watch as he brutally destroys those guys, I was like, oh yeah, what an awesome, like Shakespearean, tragic, like bloody, horrible. Like, I know that's never the movie they were going to want to make, but that's more like in the...
But that's the story that they chose to tell. They said, here's the man who is angry, who is a murderous villain for 1,000 years, gave it all up to start a family. His wife was taken from him, and he turns his children into monsters.
Great story.
That's a great story. That is the literal story that they told. But they got squeamish about it. And you got to make a decision. You're either going to tell that story or you're not. And
if you're going to tell that story, you have to tell it, which means from the very beginning, we have to understand that Tony Leung actually is a villain. You can't, I mean, I know that they want to...
You can't feel good about him taking his 7-year-old son and turning him into an assassin who he sends out on a hit at the age of 14. After taking him and exposing him to that level of violence and feeding his desire for revenge on the man who killed his mother. And then he went through with it.
Well,
and then he went through with it.
I think if Tony Leung at the very
and then
beginning,
he got sick and ran away.
At the very beginning of this movie, Tony Leung destroys that army or whatever, and he gets to the fortress that he's trying to attack. If a cat ran across his path and he kicked the cat, that fixes a whole host of problems. Because then we understand this guy's a volatile psycho man who fell in love. As he fell in love, there was something volatile, something self-destructive even about that. It just suddenly places Tony Leung as a character that I know how to feel about. Instead, they're like, yeah, he was bad. He wanted power. They never show us anything that makes us feel in any way conflicted about him. The first real emotional beat we get with him is this beautiful scene of him falling in love. And Tony Leung is great at expressing longing with just his eyes and stuff. And you're like, aw.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be
He's
like
just lonely.
It would be like in Black Panther if Michael Jordan's character never actually shot anybody or was mean to anybody, or he just showed up and said, like, I have a different way of running Wakanda.
Yeah, the fact that he turns around and caps his own girlfriend that's been with him through the first act of the movie.
You're like, oh, this guy's a complicated villain, and I understand where he's coming from, but also he's a monster, which is obviously the story they wanted to tell with Tony Leung. But you can't forget to include the monster part, and you can't just tell us about it. You have to show it. Again, you just have him kick a cat. That's all you need, or kick the crutch out from under an orphan.
Then you exposit these things. You exposit the bad things. You don't show any of it. And then you have this scene where you're supposed to have dad and son are finally going to have it out together. And all you get is a line of exposition, and then we're back in full fight mode, and then he's in the lake. And now he's got the heart of the dragon and is worthy to summon the guardian, and and it's all action from there.
Well,
and nothing with dad after that is anything but action. It's just like, I am worthy to take these rings from you, and I have embraced the mom in me and the heart of the dragon.
Here's the thing though. This movie again. Okay, Nathan, I'm liking your ritual thing more and more as a tool.
Yay!
Yeah. Again, what you get is in their final big effects fight before the gate bursts open and the super big evil scary bad dragon comes out. You get. I can't remember it all exactly. You get a few lines of dialogue, and you get a lot of the camera. The camera lets you see a lot of Tony Leung's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And what that scene is supposed to do by gesturing toward it is tell you, because it mimics the shot of Leung dancing with his wife when he's fighting with Shang-Chi. And it's like, actually, Tony Leung has just recognized in his son the beautiful thing that he loved in his wife, and he's realized he's wrong. We're not going to have the actual storytelling. We're going to have one shot. We're going to have a lot of shots of Tony Leung's eyes. And what we want you to understand, viewer, is this is actually the story we're telling. This has now happened. There's now emotional wholeness. Sorry, we don't have time to tell it, but we kind of told you, or we told you that we wanted to tell you. We gestured. Now there's understanding.
And by the way, there's a big difference between doing that, which is just pure laziness, sloppiness, and passive aggression towards your audience.
Yeah.
And intentionally letting your audience read between the lines.
Right.
And this is where our discussion in Spider-Verse always got complicated, because it was like, well, maybe they have a very specific story they're telling, and they just want the audience to be intelligent enough to connect the dots. And that would be the argument for what we represented as the Jake point of view. Fair enough. In this particular case, it's much easier to talk about, because it's not that they've given you all the correct pieces and you just have to put them together. It's that they're just throwing pieces out willy-nilly, and they're throwing enough of the pieces that you're used to in these kinds of stories that you can plausibly put it together, or especially if you're just sitting there eating your popcorn, not thinking too hard, you can sort of think, oh yeah, that was a dad story. But what did it say about dads? Who was the dad? What did the movie actually think of the dad? These are all questions that the movie forgot to answer. Was Tony Leung ultimately a psychopath who had some redemptive qualities? Or was he a great guy who had some psychopathic qualities? The movie forgot to tell me that. It did not actually answer really basic questions about who he was, about who Simu Leung, or how do you say his name? Simu Liu was. Like, was he actually the goofy guy that liked to sing karaoke? with Awkwafina? Is that actually part of his character? Or is that like something that he sort of disguised himself with? Like was he sort of a Jet Li type character who plays it close to the vest, doesn't want to show off his powers, but actually the power is inside him all the time? Like when he busts out his powers in the bus, is that like him re-embracing something that he had tried to tamp down? Or is that him just being the guy that he always was, but he was disguising it? Like, is he actually an Awkwafina? I realize that the movie has some lame answers to these questions and that they're not all completely, some of them are more tethered to meaning than others, but it's really sloppy, like in the way that it puts these things together, in a way that, again, almost feels aggressive or passive aggressive towards the audience. Like, we actually don't care that you have the answers, and we don't want you to have the answers. Like in some sense, it would make our movie less the product that we want it to be if we told a story. Like, I don't know. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, what I don't know. Schizophrenic is my word, and I think that's because I feel like it's a structural problem in the sense of there are 2, 3, maybe 4 different structures, dramatic structures, storyline structures that they're just compiling without any care, that they're just mashing together. And that's how it felt to me. Like, oh, this structure in this movie, like this way, here, we're going to do that. Oh, also, we're doing this. Oh, we forgot. We're doing this one too.
Right.
And you do none of them completely, but you're going to try to give me all of them in one movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it really makes you appreciate the classic craftsmanship that went into Black Panther. Actually,
know.
I mean, that movie.
What a sad thing to say, but very true.
It is a little sad, but that movie.
Well, a movie that's so much less fun. Yeah,
I agree, and I have no reason to ever want to go back to Black Panther. I don't really care about it that much, one way or another. But it is a movie with a first act, a second act, a third act, a through line, a character who makes sense, a guy who goes on a journey and learns something and grows in a way that enables him to become a king that honors his father, but also differentiates from his father. Like all the sorts of things that happen in stories happen in Black Panther. It's not just a bunch of stuff that almost relies on the audience to. I mean, it's like I watch a movie like Shang-Chi and I'm like, are they relying on people to not think about this? And are they relying on people to have short attention spans? Like the scene with Awkwafina where she comforts him in the village and says, your dad, and he reveals that his dad, that he did go through with the hit or whatever. That scene could work just fine if it had a setup and a payoff and was part of a screenplay.
If we were living with that tension the whole movie, like he was, if we knew that was the tension he was living with.
But I just feel like they think we're making this for the TikTok generation.
No.
And so here's the scene.
I think actually, Nathan, that's what we've come to. Let's think about our WandaVision discussion when we talked about integrity and storytelling. I think that's maybe the best insight we've ever had as a podcast or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what this is. It is the TikTok generation. It is like, actually, you know what's important? That moment Shang-Chi and his dad have when they have an important, dramatic, emotional moment. Mm-hmm. Did we set it up? Did we pay it off? Does it make sense in the context of the movie? Does not matter. That moment matters. Mm-hmm. That's what matters. And as many moments like that as we can give you, we'll give you. And that's it.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's true. Let's just pile them up. I mean, Rise of Skywalker was the same way.
Yeah.
Again, it makes you appreciate certain things. It makes you appreciate Rian Johnson, who knows how to write and wants to tell a story with integrity. Rian Johnson is out to destroy everything that I love, but he does it with integrity. Mm-hmm. Doggone it. He fights with honor.
He fights with honor.
He is my enemy, but I respect an enemy who fights with honor. I mean, I honestly, I think that's a kind of a good way to think about it.
Yeah, no, that is a good way to think about it. Huh.
J.J. Abrams in Rise of Skywalker, these guys in Shang-Chi, Black Widow was of course similar, but that wasn't as much of a surprise.
Black Widow felt more like the innocent version of this somehow.
Yeah,
somehow. I don't know why I would say that, but it's just so dumb and dorky.
Here's a provocative statement for the podcast. Maybe because women are more easily deceived. So the director of Black Widow was just like la-di-da.
yeah.
I actually want to assign more moral agency to the Shang-Chi,
Destin Daniel,
his production team. Yeah, the only question, these are films without integrity, battles without honor or humanity, films without integrity.
Yeah.
The only question is how much malicious intention to ascribe. Like, is it that they are so much a product of the TikTok generation that they just don't realize they have to write a screenplay, or is it that they are aggressively destroying the foundations of storytelling as we know it?
I have no idea.
That bus fight was cool, though.
It was awesome.
Bus fight was cool.
This movie's choreography.
Dance was cool.
The dance
fight was cool.
Yeah, those.
They're fantastic.
Well, and it was refreshing to see choreography in a Marvel movie. I mean, I don't know that we could name an action scene in Marvel that comes close. The one that everybody will want to say is the elevator fight.
The elevator scene is what. Yeah,
I think
Winter Soldier is the only thing that comes close in terms of action, and it doesn't come close.
Yeah, I think, as I've said before, the reason that people like the elevator fight is more about the setup of the elevator fight than the actual choreography of the elevator fight. This movie has actual good action done by a Jackie Chan choreographer who recently passed away, sadly. I forget what his name was.
Bradley Allen, really
great choreographer.
And a great performer himself.
Great performer and great at just the Jackie Chan school of we're going to use the whole environment to take down our enemies and to defend ourselves, which is
super fun.
Which is what makes the bus scene so fun.
And this director obviously has more of an aptitude, I think, than any Marvel director we could name, except maybe James Gunn. But James Gunn was not as good at this or as fun in his action. And this guy has absorbed like Jackie Chan and wuxia and modern like blending of CGI with practical to do some things. I was just like, okay, you know how to do it.
Right.
Most he made it feel grounded and in universe, but also developed his own style, for the whole movie. What I wanted by the time the movie was done was a movie that was decoupled from Marvel. I mean,
absolutely. Give this guy that.
Yeah. Would he have been able to and free to tell an actual good father-son story here? Would he have been free to not include a bunch of dumb idiot jokes that he despised? And I really think the movie hated the humor that was stuck into it.
It didn't like Ben Kingsley.
I think it tolerated Ben Kingsley. I think what it hated were the moments where it was like, we must work together. We will not work together. We are better than you. Oh no, a soul sucker has eaten my friend. We will work together now. Ha 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 ha.
That's
like,
so Marvel House style. Like, let's add a little humor here, fellas.
Yeah, and the movie was like, see the thing the studio made us do? It's stupid. We hate it. There it is.
You imagine Daniel Creston Noir the Third or whatever his name is, and he's in the studio, and then Feige comes in, and Feige's eating chips real loudly, and there's crumbs falling on the studio. He's like, put in a joke here. And Daniel Creston Noir the Third is like, all right.
What's the most stereotypical Marvel joke I can put in here?
What's Marvel hack joke number 43?
And the dumb thing is that when I walk out of the theater and kids are going to be like, my favorite part was the dumb joke that they inserted in this movie.
That's where it begins
to happen.
That's where it begins to feel malicious, because whether they intend it or not, they are dumbing kids down. They are teaching kids to view storytelling through a TikTok lens where it's just about a collection of moments and they really don't have to add up to anything. They just have to kind of feel like they add up to something.
So long as they had fun and they laughed and there was some random emotion here and there.
Yeah, even down to another big plot miss is, look, a village of people so powerful that even a random girl guarding the entrance can defeat the guy with the 10 rings. Oh, look, a whole village versus the army of the 10 rings. They're going to lose almost. Good thing the Soul Suckers came out and we had to... What happened to your magic powers? Like, the actual version of this story, especially with a through line where Tony Leung is a psychopath, is they break into the village, all the 10 rings all the village people have their powers, and the 10 rings guys have like guns and rocket launchers. That's the actual way a warlord would do it.
Right.
That's the actual scene.
And call it corny or contrived or whatever, but that's the way these kinds of things, that's like the Avatar story. James Cameron is enough of a classicist to steal from the best. And so that's usually, it's like machinery versus newfangled versus old fangled.
Right.
The themes don't have to be deep, but if you can have some actual themes, the military industrial complex versus the village of hippies. I mean, that's a theme. That's something that you can, but this movie just doesn't even bother to give you that much. It's kind of weird. It's kind of mind boggling. Like, I don't know.
It gets worse the more you talk about it. One of those movies.
It is definitely a movie that gets worse the more you talk about it. It's also definitely a perfectly pleasant movie to sit there and watch in the theater. Mm-hmm. And it's not so aggressively annoying in its wokeness or anything that I would persuade anyone not to see it. Although I did think
gender equity crap is
so boring.
As hack as anything else too. Like,
it's like
the sister was not allowed to learn, but she taught herself better than all the boys, but here everybody gets to fight. And now it's just like, come on, guys.
Be quiet.
Like,
just be quiet.
Well, and also, it's so weird, the aggressive desexualization in a bad way of these Marvel movies and of the Star Wars franchise now.
This platonic relationship with Simu Liu and desexed Darcy.
I mean, you can imagine
what I called her in our discussion, but she plays that Darcy type, but she's absolutely asexual.
Yeah, it's so weird to watch a movie where the random girl that Tony Leung, because they needed to draw on some feminine energy to make that scene play at all, she's the only girl that gets to have any feminine kind of anything. You have the sister with this ugly, dumb Egyptian haircut, boy cut.
You see her in this like
Prince
Kill
Valiant
Bill
cut.
Reference outfit thing.
I have to say, I was fine with the idea of a hardened, angry sister who hated men and was going to build some kind of empire to spite her father. But the movie was like, well, it's kind of bad, but also, you know what? She is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Because she did it on her own.
And now she's training girls, too. That credit scene was so lame.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is weird that you're drawing on, quite frankly, if I may, one of the most beautiful cultures of human beings. And you're going to go out of your way to have Awkwafina play this slouchy, badly dressed, desexed Darcy, as we called her on our Slack channel or whatever, character. Awkwafina just aggressively like, I hate myself. Check out my pants. Mm-hmm. They tell you everything you need. I really hate myself, and check out my body posture. I slouch. I mean, have you ever seen a slouchier performance in a movie? This movie wins best slouch. I can't think of another contender. Awkwafina is, and don't look her up, but if you look up and see what brought her to fame, it's all just like, I'm a vulgar, desexed woman like person who hates herself.
It's like most female comedians, crass and vulgar and just perverse.
Crass, vulgar, perverse, and utterly, I don't know, I guess they think it's empowering to act exactly like a man. I mean, I guess I'm just describing feminism, but it's hilarious to me how little female comedians ever give thought to how a woman might be funny.
Yep.
They just try and do what the boys do, and they have to do it louder and brasher and more vulgar to even make an impact. Or you can be like Sarah Silverman and do all that and also try and be cute and show some leg. That's the way to really be popular. But we're beyond that now. We have to have Awkwafina slouching around, being gross. And so you have her, and then you have the sister who's completely hardened and not allowed to really be soft or beautiful or anything like that. Really, the best feminine energy comes from Michelle Yeoh, who's just a very classically graceful female.
Who's also a feminist shill.
Yeah. They actually put most of the feminist jargon, if somebody's going to give a feminist speech, whatever, we're actually going to give it to the woman who's the most traditionally feminine, which is ridiculous. But Michelle Yeoh, by the way, drove a motorcycle onto a moving train in Super Cop, aka Police Story 3. That woman actually is, I know we're not allowed to say the word for what someone who's really awesome is, but Michelle Yeoh,
she's that.
Is that.
Athletically, she actually has the chops. She is the
closest thing to a battle babe that you will find. Because Hong Kong...
excuse me, Gina Carano?
I'm sorry, Ben. I forgot. How could I forget? No, but the thing about Hong Kong, the thing about pagan cultures in general is that they just don't care as much about life. which makes action scenes easier to film because you can just say, "Hey, Michelle, you want to drive a motorcycle onto a train?" And she will, and she'll miss it in the credits cookies. So
she is a battle. She's just not a babe.
Mm-hmm.
She was an MMA fighter.
Well, and you kind of got to love her for being like, I could be a babe or I could do battle, but I can't really do both. So make your pick. I mean, she's much more honest in some ways. But anyway, what else to say about this movie? I hate Awkwafina. She gets on my nerves. You can imagine how, again, simple fixes, simple screenplay fixes. Choose a point of view, because if it's from the point of view of the best friend of the hero who's following him around and who's discovering all this stuff, it makes much more sense to parse out the information the way that they parse it out. But the fact that it's finally, we start, like when the movie proper begins, after we've done all the setup and legwork, we're going to start in bed with, what's his face? What is Shang-Chi's character's name called?
Sean.
We're going to Shang-Chi. We're going to start with Sean waking up. We're going to sort of see things from his point of view, but then they're going to withhold everything that we need to know to understand who that guy is. It's just sloppy storytelling. It makes much more sense. If you're going to have big surprises about a character, you kind of want to see it from someone's else's point of view, or have a point of view.
Yeah.
It's not something that people often think about, but movies actually are just as point of viewy as literature if you're not being sloppy about it. I mean, you can do an omniscient point of view, but you have to commit to that and then play fair with the audience and give them information omnisciently. Anyway, this movie sucks. I hate Marvel. What else? So we talked about Awkwafina. Sounds like you guys liked Simu
Lu.
I like
Simu
him.
Lu.
I just wish they wrote a character for him and trusted him to carry the movie. I want the version of this movie where we don't feel the need to throw Awkwafina alongside him to be sure there's plenty of personality, and we just allow it to be a father-son story where he battles his demons. You could tell the story with Awkwafina there if you wanted to, but I mean, there's just so much that's just fighting.
Well, then you have to have a point of view on Awkwafina. Is she holding him back? Does she want him to be lame and self-actualized because that's better for her? These are all the kinds of stories that you can tell with a character like Awkwafina.
All you had to do was start their relationship off like that and then show that obviously there's lots of sexual tension. Obviously she's vulnerable and Simu Lu is taking advantage of her for 10 years or whatever, however long it is. And that goes along with the way that he represses his own violence and his violent past. He's repressing everything, and she doesn't know why he's so compelling, but he's using her, and you just actually make
totally
a movie with
that.
these characters. And Awkwafina would be great at that. You force her to be vulnerable.
But in the end, what you end up doing is being sure that we go back to karaoke with her and Wong. If what he's doing is using her and holding her back so that he can perpetuate his adolescence and avoid dealing with his problems, and he's found somebody that he can just like...
Who will be a bro.
Who'll be a bro. And he can just feed that and kind of keep her in bro mode. And you can use the friends instead of as like dopey idiots who got on with their lives and became lawyers and crap, as like concerned people who share maybe an audience point of view of what you're doing is actually not healthy and not okay. And it's not your family and your friends that are stupid. It's you that are stupid. They could have done that. But they weren't going to do that.
It started to happen. That movie actually started to happen in a couple. That's the thing. This movie is schizophrenic. That one scene you get with Awkwafina and his family. Yeah, they were actually. I thought they were sympathetically like, "Hey, you guys, get on with your life. When are you going to marry her?"
Well, again, it's like
but they wrote it
the whole
off.
time. It's a scene that it's a scene that wants to actually make you feel like this story is churning into motion, and we sort of have the feelings of the story even in other scenes, but it never goes anywhere. It never.
Yeah.
There's zero sexual tension between the two of them. There's no point in that movie where you believe that they should become a couple or something like that.
No.
The grandma doesn't see a couple that's burgeoning in love. It sees two young people she doesn't understand who are boy and girl hanging out, and the only sense she can make of it is, I don't understand why you're not married. And grandma just doesn't get it. Doesn't get this new sort of platonic adolescent prolonged garbage.
Man, I miss boys and girls being in movies and falling in love. I really miss it. I think, yeah, okay, it's a trope, and it's a tired trope, and it's one that we saw a million times back when they made movies about human beings with relatable human things going on. But there's nothing better to anchor a story than Peter loves MJ, but he feels like he can't, it's universal. We all get it, and we can all connect to it, and we can all enter into it with simple sexual dynamics between man and woman, boy and girl. Boy wants girl, boy can't have girl, boy is repressed. There's just so many different simple variations you can play on that and have instant audience identification and understanding and entry.
Yeah, you can watch Raimi do that over 3 films and be super annoyed with the fact that he just keeps toying with this relationship and flip-flopping things and inverting things and causing problems and chaos and tension here and there. But what you can't deny is that the reason he can get away with that is because relationships matter and work.
Right.
And he does, man. It's so annoying. It's so obnoxious.
Oh, and Sam Raimi's very heavy-handed and melodramatic about it all. But it's there structurally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, imagine if they made Die Hard right now, and you couldn't actually have Bruce Willis fighting to regain his wife or whatever. Like you'd have to, I don't know how they'd complicate it or make it different, but you couldn't just use simple like she despises him, but because he's hard to live with. But actually, it turns out guys who are hard to live with are really nice to have around when there's a bunch of terrorists. And like you couldn't just hit simple beats like that anymore because they're politically incorrect and or whatever. We just don't want to do them anymore. And it gives you less ways to actually relate to, enjoy, and be emotionally moved by these movies. And there's so many simple hack screenwriter ways that they could have gone with the Awkwafina relationship. She's the girl that pines after him. He's never given her the time of day. She's been friend zoned, but he's going to suddenly reveal all this potency and they're going to come, that's one way you could go. There's, I can name 4 or 5 ways you could go with it, but they'd all be better than just not going anywhere with it.
Yeah. Bummer.
I don't think we've spent sufficient time talking about how great Tony Leung is. He's really great.
He's awesome. I went and started looking up movies that he was in to watch. I rewatched Hero.
It's been so long since I've seen that. I don't even remember who he plays.
He plays Broken Sword. He's like the chief conspirator on the other side. So you got Donnie Yen, and then you've got Broken Sword and his lover.
So is he ultimately a villain?
No, he's the good guy who turns the whole movie. Who convinces Jet Li to not kill the Emperor after all, and then they all die.
Yeah.
He lets the girl kill him so that she'll finally learn the lesson, and Jet Li walks away and dies, and then the girlfriend commits seppuku. And
yep. Man, nobody does beautiful fatalism better than the Chinese.
Well, the Japanese.
Or the Japanese. Well, yeah, maybe the Japanese. But the Japanese.
It's not so beautiful, actually.
The thing about the Japanese
is not so sword, and then he comes
It's just horrible.
And then pulls the sword all the way through his into her.
Yeah.
And everybody dies. And
Yeah,
so we get like basically the entire second and third act feature him and his girl through different scenarios as it's being told, as it's being reimagined by the Emperor, and then as it actually happened.
That's right. That is a weird, slow, interesting movie.
It is a pretty cold movie, actually.
Yeah, it left me a little cold. I think House of Flying Daggers is the one that I like.
House of Flying Daggers is not cold.
No, it's a little bit too hot.
It's it's overwhelming.
But yeah.
But it also doesn't have Tony Leung, which is who we're talking about. So,
well, the Tony Leung movie that I watched, just to get a little bit more, a deeper breath of lung. I'm trying to make a pun here, but it's not working.
Wow.
I don't think there's a way
to get a lung full.
To get a lung full. Yeah, is the I believe Cannes Film Festival winner of 2000, In the Mood for Love, which is a movie by a guy named Wong Kar-wai.
Wong Kar-wai, I think.
Wong Kar-wai.
Maybe it's Wai. I never know.
Wong Kar-wai, probably. Yeah, very influential sort of art house director. In the Mood for Love is a beautiful movie, very, very fatalistic, like we've been talking about a man played by Tony Leung and a woman played by not Tony Leung, a woman played by a woman, in fact, whose spouses start cheating on them, and they slowly fall in love with each other as they process the fact that their spouses are cheating together. And it's just very slow and languorous, and spoiler alert, they never do anything about it. So it's all kind of about the tension of unrequited love. And anyway, my only point is Tony Leung is so good at playing like all this stuff where his character's feeling everything, but he can't say anything. Like, it's not about playing emotions as an actor. The really great actors can play the emotions that they're not allowed to play. They can play all the stuff that they're holding back. They can play all the things they're not saying. And Tony Leung, he just may be one of the greatest actors of all time in terms of the ability to just communicate things with his eyes, with a gesture, with here's a guy that's keeping so much under the surface. The iceberg theory. You see a little bit, but there's worlds going on underneath. He is just a great actor when it comes to that sort of thing. And he brings so much to this movie. And it's a real shame that, I don't know, I guess it's better than like the 90s when Jackie Chan had to do Rush Hour in order to make it, and John Woo had to do Broken Arrow with Christian Slater. And
I guess so. And Sui Hak, or whatever his name is, had to do Knockoff with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, boo, yeah. Yeah, we've
all
never...
kinds of things like that.
Yeah, Hollywood's always... these guys always eventually come to Hollywood because that's where the money is. But
and then they make awful schlock with RB stars or something. It's just...
Yep. Oh, okay. What else do we need to say about this movie? I really liked Peppermint Dragon, the peppermint-colored good guy dragon. He was a cool dragon. Maybe the coolest
water
dragon
that
I've ever...
looks just like the dragon out of Raya, in The Last Dragon.
Spirited
Starring
Away.
Awkwafina as the dragon.
Oh, by the way, how dare you reference Miyazaki? Your movie doesn't deserve to make me feel like there's anything Miyazaki going on. Also, he's Japanese, you racists. Stay out of Miyazaki's lane. You don't get to have your little village feel like Miyazaki.
Yep.
You don't get to have your cute little animal, and your cute little animals suck.
Headless dog.
That's
with
pretty
wings.
annoying.
It was very Miyazaki.
It was very Miyazaki and very lame, and just didn't bring a lot. Was not bringing as much as the movie wanted it to. And then those lions were really bad CGI. And then the only thing that I liked was Peppermint Dragon. I thought Peppermint Guardian Dragon was
pretty cool.
Quite possibly the coolest live action dragon I've seen. Who are the famous live action dragons? You've got your Never Ending Story dragon.
Pete.
You've got dragon. Pete. You've got Pete's dragon. I'm only going for live action dragons here. You've got Smaug from Hobbits, The Desolation Thereof, and whatever the third one was called. You've got Sean Connery and Dragonheart playing Draco the dragon. I think Peppermint Guardian Dragon might be the coolest CGI dragon.
You've got Reign of Fire dragons.
Oh, I've never actually seen Reign of Fire.
Reign of Fire had pretty cool dragons.
I like a dragon. I like a good dragon movie. And this movie, I was very disappointed that the Watcher Lurker of Souls guy was not something better after the build. After if you're gonna be at the Lurker of Souls that we've kept at bay for thousands of years, you can't just be a tentacles. Monster. Yeah, but I don't know. The fact that he could even be taken down by Peppermint Dragon
in the Ten Rings, yeah, it all seemed a little too easy.
If you're a lurking soul sucker that's been kept on the other side of a magical portal,
and if you're by
the Guardian in the
dreams,
first place,
what's that?
Put there by the Guardian Dragon in the first place
with help.
Yeah, you should not be able to be hurt by an arrow fired by slouch face Awkwafina. That's guess what never happens at the end of an H.P. Lovecraft story? Awkwafina never once fires an arrow that she just learned how to use 5 minutes ago into Cthulhu. Now, those stories have lasted a long time. People like those Cthulhu stories. You know why? It's because Awkwafina never fires an arrow that she just learned 5 minutes ago how to fire into Cthulhu. It never happens. Not once. Because
not even with dragon scale arrows?
Not even with dragon scale arrows. Because it would be stupid.
Not even if the wise old patriarch who decided he'll be your friend after all taught you?
No.
Not even if the wise old woman taught you that if you aim at nothing, you hit nothing?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was tying together the movie's themes, man. How could you forget that? It was a through line. Awkwafina doesn't know what she's doing, and then she discovers her purpose, kind of, somehow, in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. Her purpose being to shoot arrows, I guess.
Yep.
And then go back to karaoke.
Yep. Well, ready to save the world. She goes back to karaoke. With Wong.
I hate the last scene where they're like, their friends are like, what? Ooh.
It's so lame.
It's such a like, that's a Marvel thing, if ever. That's where Kevin Feige's like, chips, we need another scene, guy. I don't know why I like to imagine Kevin Feige mouth breathing behind the director.
What kind of chips do you think Kevin Feige likes to eat?
Now that is where this podcast should have started. I'm thinking like a Sweet Baby Ray barbecue, maybe. I don't know, Jake, your thoughts. What kind of chips does Kevin Feige eat? You know what? It's probably Marvel branded. It's probably like Spider-Man chips or something.
So he probably has some deal with like Lay's or something like that, and it's just plain Lay's potato chips with Spider-Man on the bag.
Huh. For the purposes of my story, I think it's like old. They had like cases and cases of Iron Man 2 chips. They got too many, and they just sit in the studio, and Feige wanders into the warehouse and just like grabs the thing of chips, and then he's like stuffing it into his mouth as he gives bad notes to directors to make their movies worse.
That sounds good. It sounds good.
But it's plain Lay's potato chips.
Yeah, it's just plain Lay's.
Big brand, bland.
Probably it's like
the only reason anybody ever gets them is because they're going to some picnic and they don't want to get something that people will hate.
Mm-hmm. Big, bland, for everybody and for nobody.
Yep.
It's kind of Feige's brand, I guess. It's a metaphor.
Never the chips that you pick out for yourself when you want chips, but the chips that you get when you need to bring chips to a party and...
Not the chips that we deserve, but the ones we need right now.
Yep.
Oh. Someday we'll have to litigate Dark Knight. That's what this discussion reminds me of.
Someday we will. People just have to get our Patreon to some level, which is a great thing to say. Go to patreon.com/sanity at the movies. Get us to 500, I think, and we'll talk about it.
Awesome.
So you got a little ways to go, folks, but keep chipping away at it. Chipping away at it? Get it? Because we're talking about chips. Well, what else do you guys want to say about this movie? Anything? Let's see. We've litigated Awkwafina. We've litigated Hero Guy. Won't try to mispronounce his name again. We've litigated Tony Leung. We've litigated Act 2 and Act 1. We haven't really talked about Act 2. Act 2 is like a lot of not action and a lot of...
completely lame plot dump insanity, plus Ben Kingsley doing his shtick for like an hour.
Yeah, I guess you were not a big fan of Trevor Slattery's return, Ben.
I felt cringe the whole time. Like, this is kind of a funny, clever idea, theoretically, and it's not fun the longer it goes on.
Well, even it has the stench of we have to apologize for something to our woke overlords. I'm not even sure exactly what they're apologizing for. Wasn't Iron Man 3 actually the apology? Wasn't Iron Man 3 saying, we know the Mandarin's a racist character, and so we're going to evoke it, but then we're going to say, actually, it's all part of Guy Pearce, the white oppressors.
Yeah, it was already
Well, they have to
enough.
apologize for the apology. They also have to apologize for Iron Fist.
Yeah, well, they should apologize for Iron Fist. I'm with them there. Yeah. I don't know. Jake, did you have more leniency for Ben Kingsley than Ben did? Maybe Ben just doesn't like another Ben. He feels threatened by other Bens.
And the world is a very threatening place for me.
I would have, if I were the director, screenwriter, and I did not want to write a stupid Marvel movie with stupid Marvel jokes, but knew I needed to tip my hand to Marvel and have some Marvel feeling moments, I feel like Ben Kingsley might have been a just fine way to do that.
Like you have no Awkwafina, or Awkwafina has a good role to play.
That's right.
There's not a bunch of dumb,
none of the
quippy
other things. And then when I need to tip my hand to the studio, I let Ben Kingsley be Ben Kingsley, and everybody understands that he's not actually a part of this movie. He's just sort of like Stanley's ghost in the background.
Sure. Sounds great.
It's too bad they didn't hire Ben Kingsley to play Stanley's ghost. Ooh, this movie sucks.
I would have never approved of the direction the studio is going.
That would be great. And then the soul sucker gets him.
It should have CGI'd Stan Lee's head on all of this soul suckers.
Stan Lee should have just played the soul sucker. Stan Lee's ghost should have just come out and been like, "Ah!" and Peppermint Dragon drags him down into the water. I liked Ben Kingsley, I think, better than you guys. I didn't think he was funny, but I was fine with it. I like the idea, I guess, and it's fun to see Sir Ben Kingsley hamming it up a little bit.
Yeah, he had some funny lines. I just at the same time that you introduced him, you're like, actually, this dungeon is a way out of. We could go steal their cars and escape. And actually, I'll tell you how. I have a magical creature from the forest that knows when the forest opens, and I know all the plot dump that you need to get out of here. Oh, but cut to Tony Leung. Oh no, they're escaping. Well, I guess I didn't see that coming.
Right.
Like what movie? Why
they'll change once I free their mother.
Movie give up. Right. Movie done. Like no more. Movie no more. Like it's just all right. We did pretend to care about storytelling. It's true, but we
don't. Just to be frank.
No, we've stopped.
Well, and then Ben Kingsley gets to the village and he doesn't do anything. He's like, well, now I'm going to play dead. And like he gets one joke. Like they really did just need the character to bridge the exposition. And then they're like, go away. We don't need you anymore.
His good joke was the Planet of the Apes joke.
That was a good it was a good joke.
Oh, yeah, that was funny.
But but it was trying to distract me from the fact that there's this whole goofy thing about how he knows how the forest is going to open, blah, 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 blah. So...
Well, he's just interpreting
Morris. Yeah,
Morris.
Marius, you guys. My goodness.
Was it Marius?
Respect
no, it's
for
Morris.
Marius. It's Marius.
No, it's Morris.
It's Marius, the headless winged pig thing.
No. It's Morris.
Shang-Chi.
Marius.
Magical. It's clearly Marius.
Shang-Chi. I thought it was
nope.
Morris.
Mattel. Morris. Morris.
What?
Yeah. You go buy the character from Mattel.
Well,
it's Morris.
I'm going with Ben Kingsley's interpretation of Morris, which is Marius. Pretty sure.
No, I think you just misheard it. It was clearly Morris.
Look, guys, a funny joke. Maybe I can distract you from the flaw in my information. Okay, cool. You win.
Okay, anything else? Excuse me. We also don't know what the bad organization, just to continue talking about how much this movie does not give you key information that would help you know how to feel about things. Like, what is the Ten Rings organization? What do they actually do? Who have they actually assassinated? I mean, I know there are some lame, bad, underdeveloped answers, but the lame, bad, underdeveloped answers aren't the same thing as actual answers that actually tell you how to feel about a thing. Like, are they propping up governments that I like, but doing it in a bad way? Are they ultimately out to take over the world completely? They just haven't done it yet. Like,
it's kind of like, well, yeah, it's not kind of like that. It's as bad.
It sort of reminds me of Batman Begins. That was a thing that I like. So I guess I can...
It's sort of like the Bond stuff. It's sort of like Hydra.
Yeah, but I know what Hydra wants, and I know what Bond stuff... I mean, I know you don't disagree with me, Jake. But, I'm just arguing with them as they say, it's like this thing. But it's not like this thing because it doesn't actually do a thing. In order for a thing to be a thing, the thing has to be a thing that does a thing.
Yeah, why didn't you tell us that they were behind X, Y, and Z? You need 3 things to tell us what they were actually behind all along.
Well, the problem is that as soon as you do that, why didn't any other Marvel movies address this with their global confrontation of evil and their apocalyptic saving the world scenarios? And it's just, I don't know.
Why didn't Nick Fury know?
Yeah, basically, it's like, let's just see if we can get away with creating another all-powerful worldwide terrorist-ish sort of organization that happens to never have been mentioned in the rest of the Marvel universe so far.
Right.
That's how I felt about it, is we're just trying to slip it underneath.
But it's an easy problem to solve. You just have to solve either his big plan that he'd been working on for the past 1,000 years hasn't come to fruition yet, but there is one, and that's one direction you could go. Or like Ducard and Batman Begins used just a sign like we were behind the London fire of the 1800s, and here's 2 or 3 things that we did.
Yeah, that would have been just fine.
I'm okay with them winking at the fact that I think Marvel's always going to have the problem of, well, we're going back and retconning things, or this hero was doing this now, so why didn't
just
Nick
be able to wink at that? But they should actually take time to wink.
Mm-hmm.
Right, or something. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. does not know about how diabolical I am. At least give him that speech,
Yeah. Oh, was it a surprise that Hydra was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D.? We knew that. The Hydra's beneath us. That was child's play.
Right. At least give him like the lame speech that Christoph
sure.
Waltz has in Spectre, where he's like, whatever, the organization that Eva Green was working for. It's like the thing from the other James Bond movie, the thing from the James Bond movie before that, and the thing from the James Bond movie before that. They were all me, James. Like, at least that movie sucks, but at least they tried.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ben,
and it looks like it really does look like from the trailer that the next James Bond movie is going to be the thing from the Bond movie before that.
Stop it, guys. You could just have James Bond walk into the office and have Ralph Fiennes be like, here's your mission. But they never want to do that anymore. I don't know why. I liked the old James Bond movies where he walked into the office and he flirted with Moneypenny. And then M was like, come in here, James. Another guy's trying to take over the world. I don't know why all my characters talk like that. Talk like this. But I liked when James Bond was an agent who got missions.
Yeah.
Not everything has to be personal. The entire thing about James Bond is that it's impersonal. He's a killing machine who works for the government.
Daniel Craig's James Bond.
Yeah, well, Daniel Craig, I'm just going to say it. Daniel James's Craig Bond is a pansy. He's a pansy. Sean Connery, he just liked killing people. He just liked Roger Moore. He was just having a great time killing people. That's James Bond. You don't have to like it, but that's James Bond. He's a hedonistic jerk who doesn't feel very much. But these new movies are like, oh, I don't feel very much. I wish I did. And now I do through the power of love. Whatever. I mean, it's still more of a story than Shang-Chi tried to tell.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I don't know, Daniel Craig, you sissy. Just get over it. Go on a mission for once in your life. I hope at some point in this James Bond movie, Daniel Craig goes on a mission, because Daniel Craig has, I don't think, ever actually gone on a mission in these James Bond movies, except for maybe Casino Royale at the very beginning when he's like earning his bootstraps. He goes on a couple missions, but anyway, that one's for free, folks.
Mm-hmm.
What's the bad guy in this new James Bond movie? He's like, I am but a shadowy reflection of yourself, James. Everybody in the Daniel Craig franchise has been a shadowy reflection. Javier Bardem was a shadowy reflection of him. Mads Mikkelsen was a shadowy reflection of him. Christoph Waltz was a shadowy... The boring guy in Quantum of Solace was a shadowy reflection of him. I don't need any more shadowy reflections of him. I need a guy in a chair that's pushing a button to make a laser shoot. What happened to that guy?
Give him a cat.
Yeah, give him a cat. I mean, I guess you can't give
that was
him
Christoph Waltz's character.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I think they even did give him a cat. But then he was like, I look like a guy in a chair with a cat, but actually I'm a shadowy reflection of you. No. I don't need any more shadowy reflections of heroes.
Hey, since Shang-Chi failed as being an actual good movie, can we talk about how it also failed as a Marvel movie?
Yeah, let's. How did it fail as a Marvel movie? This is an interesting take.
So one of the things that it tried to do that was cool was exist as a movie with its own little world that was kind of independent, that you could come to independently of the MCU. It just threw in a little bit of Wong and Abomination or whatever the dude's name is. Is that his name?
Let's just say one Wong doesn't make a right. Pause for everyone to laugh. Let's give it a few more seconds. All right, Jake, go ahead.
I don't have any idea how Shang-Chi ties into anything in the MCU.
Racist.
And I have no idea how he fits. And the mid-credit scene or post-credit scene or whichever one it was doesn't help. And I don't care about I just don't care about him showing up in an Avengers movie or in a Doctor Strange or a Spider-Man movie. I don't see how he fits in that world, in those worlds either.
I mean, he fits in the Doctor Strange verse pretty okay. I mean, if I was going to push back on your argument, I guess that's what I'd say. That's obviously the direction they were going with Wong and everything.
Sure.
I guess.
But
yeah.
But did you come away, if it's going to be a Marvel, if Marvel's going to insert itself and make sure it feels Marvel-y, I think that Marvel needs to go the extra step and make you excited about more Marvel properties in the process and how they all interconnect.
They tried doing that by having Brie Larson show up and what's his face, Mark Ruffalo show up. That was
shocker, Mark Ruffalo, and not Smart Hulk. Okay, but
yeah, but that doesn't tell us why this connects to Shang-Chi, and also Brie Larson is annoying.
Yep.
Although she actually got her start with Daniel Cretton Noir III. So,
yep,
that's something worth knowing, I guess. Yeah, this movie did not make me excited to see more Shang-Chi Marvel adventures. That's true.
I just thought that was worth noting. I didn't come away excited about anything that's coming next or excited about going back to anything. And that's fine. I prefer them trying to make a standalone movie, but I also don't want to come back to this as a standalone movie. So
well, and also, unlike Black Panther, they feel the need to split the difference just enough. We got to have Ben Kingsley in there. We got to have a credits cookie thing with a bunch of heroes that we recognize from Avengers or Avengers adjacent things. Like, they didn't have the charm of it actually just being its own thing, which Black Panther by and large did, even though it did have what's his face, the Tolkien guy, the Tolkien white guy, as everyone was joking back at the time. Yeah. Have we adequately said how much the things that we liked? Because I think we all did really love the action. The bus scene was good. I will say I will reiterate what I think one of you guys said, which is even the schlocky Marvel were shooting power beams at each other stuff was a lot better done than I think I've seen it before. Like the final ring fight where they're basically just shooting lasers out of their hands and floating around like every Marvel movie. I think it was better. It was better choreographed, and
I liked it as a piece of action choreography.
Yeah,
just the dragons swirling around each other and the water dragon using the water and all that stuff. It was just well designed.
I was disappointed that we didn't end with an actual kung fu fight. I think if I was writing this movie, I might even have his dad be like, I'm going to put the rings down so that we can kick each other for a while.
That did occur to me.
That's what the audience really wants to see. Yeah. Tell you what, I'll kick you for the rings. I mean, that'd be the easiest, schlockiest way of doing it. But it is weird to have a wuxia inspired movie that does not actually end with a kung fu battle.
I mean, yeah, that's what should have happened. They burned it all in their first act, and they didn't. They knew that. I mean, I guess the charitable read is if we come out with a bang, then we'll have the audience for the rest of this movie. And they did. They had me for the rest of the movie. But even in the third act, by the third act, I come to these movies to have fun and to enjoy them and to come away being the guy who said it was just a fun movie, guys. But it took me out of it. Being so has like to say schizophrenic. But man, that first act promised so much.
Oh, man.
Well, that's the thing. It is a promise, and it's not one that they keep. Like a James Bond movie, since I was stuck on James Bond a minute ago, when they have the big opening set piece where James drives a motorcycle off of a cliff and then climbs into a plane and everything, the promise is we started with that. We threw that one away. That's not even connected to the plot. And now, what do you think we have in store for you? And this is the same thing. Like
every good action movie does that, and a Mission Impossible movie is going to do that.
Right. It's just classic.
It's just the formula.
Filmmaking.
Right? You come out and you have an awesome grab them by the chest set piece that promises and sets up your actual awesome set piece.
Yeah. If Indiana Jones already ran from a boulder, dived onto a plane, ran from natives, avoided all these traps, like, wait till you see the rest of the movie. And then we have the iconic truck chase towards the end of Act 3 that's actually better. That's action filmmaking for you.
They wanted the dragon sequence to be that clearly. But and the thing is that you almost, in a good movie with a clear dramatic structure, if he had the final fight with his dad and it had the dramatic and emotional impact they wanted it to have, you could have given me a dragon fight as your finale.
I think
it would have felt earned.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. I still think for actual martial arts fans, it's sad because they're like, look, we're doing some Jackie Chan stuff. That's fun to see. And then they're like, we're not going to do that anymore.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it feels disingenuous that the bus scene and the scaffolding scene were released early so that you could watch clips of them and stuff. So it's like, wow, if they're releasing this, I wonder what else they got. Nothing. And the answer is nothing. Yep. And Marvel does that sort of thing all the time. Yeah. They do. They just, I hate Marvel advertising. They never hold anything back. It's always like, well, here's the 3 reasons you should see the movie. And the implicit promise is that there's actually 5 reasons, but they held 2 of them back, but they never do. It's always like, here's Iron Man rescuing all the people who are falling out of the plane. Here's most of the scene. Marvel just always does that. The only time they didn't do it was the Endgame things. And those movies were fun because you had to actually wait to see which heroes were going to... No, you didn't. You saw which heroes came back. But you didn't see portal. They didn't give away portals. I guess that's all I'm saying. All right. Ben, how many bamboo sticks out of 1,000 do you give to Shang-Chi?
Oh, man. I give it like 300.
300 bamboo sticks out of 1,000?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Jake, how many bamboo sticks out of 1,000?
400.
400? Wow. So do I want to Prices Right this? Do I want to, after all this, be the most positive?
Da-da-da.
You guys pretty negative ultimately. I mean, those are some bad scores. That's not a lot of bamboo sticks.
Come on down, Nathan.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, I'll give 1,000 bamboo sticks to Tony Leung's eyes.
Sure. If we're going to break it down, we can give the choreography and Tony Leung 1,000 points.
Yep.
Definitely.
We can give Simu Liu's potential 800 points.
Yep.
If you just took, here's a question. If you just took the entire flashback backstory as its own mini movie or something, well, no, you can't. But the flashback mini movie stuff is, I can't think of parts of it that aren't high quality.
Right.
That aren't gripping, at least. That don't seem to be telling a coherent story.
Yeah.
That stuff is all pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wenwu and the Ten Rings. Great movie.
Wenwu and the Ten Rings, even the stuff with the sister when she's like afraid and young.
Yeah, that stuff's all great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love a good heroic bloodshed movie, a good gangster revenge from that style type part of the world story. Like all that stuff was good. Yeah. It's nice to feel things in movies. And those parts were the parts that made you feel things. You felt some romance when they were doing their corny, kung fu fight that had a little bit of Eros in it, which is such a lame trope from that side of the world, but it works.
Oh, it's great.
And then, when mom died, you felt something. And then when dad took his revenge and made little brother watch, you felt something there too.
And the training stuff, the creepy guy with the mask.
Yeah.
Man, it's like, oh boy, they're going to pay this off. Because really where the movie stops being a good movie is at the end of that scaffolding fight scene when he fights the guy with the mask.
When Tony Leung shows up.
And he's about to just kill him.
Yeah.
That stuff flashes through his mind and you're like, and he's like, okay, done. I'm not holding this back. I hate you. I'm going to kill you. And then his dad stops him. Now that. And
then they have the moment where they have the headbutt.
All of that is awesome. And you're like, great. Man, this movie is making me lots of promises. It even basically said, actually, Shang-Chi is a nasty killer. And that's what he's going. But then it's like, no, actually, no, that's true.
Yep.
And that mask. Oh yeah, he's kind of a bad guy. Oh, we'll have him be the first one to get eaten by a soul sucker. That'll be a satisfying conclusion to the story of Mask Life. I thought this character had some personal meaning to Shang-Chi, and that's why we cared about. But apparently not. So
he's just the butt of a joke.
The butt of a joke.
So my wife likes to watch these movies, and she likes to call them, and she's just like your standard Marvel audience member, right?
Right.
And so she was like, "What's with this mask guy?" And she spent half the movie whispering, like, "I think the mask guy's his mom." Or
that flashed through my mind, and I rejected it because I was like, that would be too stupid.
Come on, it's Marvel.
Yeah.
But it is the kind of thing where you're like, it's someone important.
Yeah, if you're telling a story with like payoffs and setups and things, then obviously Mask Guy was like is somebody, but no, Mask Guy's nobody. It doesn't matter. I mean, Mask Guy could have been Michelle Yeoh. I mean, we could sit here and we could come up with somebody that Mask Guy
could have just been a nasty older assassin who gets unmasked and has something to say about, we all pay the price, Shang-Chi, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. You just give me something.
He's Clive Owen from Bourne. Look at what they make us.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Something. Like a character. Like,
but not negative.
Yeah.
Like, take it all away from me.
Well, and you can do that too. There's a way to set that up where it's like, we are intentionally making this guy seem really important, and then, he got his soul set. You can actually do that in a non-sloppy, non-lazy way, where the movie is trying to communicate something for a joke or for whatever. A great example of that, a moment that I love, is Kong Skull Island, the great Kong Skull Island, where some guy goes to do the heroic sacrifice. He's got like his grenade belt and he's running up to the monster, and then whoever the monster is just swats him with his tail, and he goes flying into a mountain and blows up far in the background. It's really nihilistic and pretty funny for a monster. Like, you can do things like that, but the movie's being nihilistic. It's being funny. It's making fun of the trope of the heroic sacrifice. There's ways to do that, but this movie is just like, here's some more things that could happen. Some things happened over there. Now some things are happening over here. I will give it... So, Ben, you gave it 300 bamboo sticks, and Jake gave it 4.
Yeah.
I'll give it 350
All right.
bamboo sticks. I'll split the difference.
You have brought balance to this podcast. Sorry. We're going to get canceled.
Okay. Shang-Chi. What a movie.
Shang-Chi.
I think
you meant to say.
I've probably been racistly mangling things this whole time. Although I think Tony Leung is actually correct. I think it is 2 syllables, but I could be crazy about that. Okay. Patreon.com/Sanity at the movies is the place to go. Get us up, so that we can talk about Tim Burton, about Richard Donner, about the hero's journey through Spider-Man. So many fun things we want to be able to give more history and more context and stuff as we get to these kinds of discussions, and it's just be fun conversations to have. So patreon.com. Plus you can hear Clone Wars reviews. There's just so many good things that can happen on that Patreon. Patreon.com/Sanity at the movies. Go there. Sign up today. Little as $5 a month. Support this podcast. All right. Until next time.
If you aim at nothing, you hit nothing.
Oh, boy. I feel almost insulted on the movie's behalf. The movie deserves it. But, man, you know what? It actually describes the movie.
Welcome to the circus.
This is what got pulled onto the IMDb quotes page?
No. I don't know.
Isn't there like Awkwafina? Doesn't she have a line? Or does she just goes, ah?
I think that's right.
You're the product of all that came before you, Marvel.
We make a good team.
Is that what Awkwafina says?
It is. To the garbage truck driver. It's actually a funny moment.
Oh, yeah, that was funny.
It's actually legitimately like a good joke.
Yeah, no. Once Awkwafina tagged along on the adventure, that's when she really got on my nerves, because she's just like, I'm slouching and I have these ugly pants and I hate myself. Hey. And I'm like, why? This isn't helping. All right. Well, goodbye, folks. Until next time.
She's a driver.
She's a driver?
Welcome to the circus.
Oh, yeah, she's a good driver. Why didn't she use her driving skills at the end?
Did.
She could have been on the Dragon. She could have been like
skills. They would never have gotten through the maze if it wasn't for her awesome driving skills.
Well, they should have attached a wheel to Peppermint Dragon and she should have driven it. That's what should have happened. Then she would have had a thing that she set up. Or Peppermint Dragon should have eaten her, and she should have went, ah! And then
Until next time.
lame, like, pair of sweatpants or whatever could come flying out. And the audience could clap. Until next time.
Calm down. It's called acting. I'm not dead. Or whatever the line is.
Okay. Good enough.
All right. I'm hitting stop on this podcast, folks.
I gave you like 3 of them.
Yeah.
They're probably the best lines of the whole movie. So
the podcast has just been a bunch of things. We're actually doing a meta commentary on the movie. Our ending is just like a bunch of random stuff. Some of it feels meaningful. Most of it's not. Okay. Goodbye.